No national healing for Americans. No national healing for Americans. Trump still fuels racial divide a year after Charlottesville. And so we have seen a lot of things happen recently where police have been. We've had incidences where people have been shot by cops, and cops have been exonerated for acts that those have felt were unjust. And so you can see that there is no national healing at all. And it has gone a lot lopsided and farsighted to the point to where there's no rationale anymore. And it's just become a war ground. And this is going on in America, in different cities, different states. And so this is out of the AP. Julie Pace, Steve Peoples, and ZK Miller. And so this is really sad. So, Washington Associated Press, there has been no reset, no moment of national healing. 1 year after blaming both sides for violent clashes between white supremacists and counter protesters, President Donald Trump still flirts with racially tinged rhetoric and feels little blowback from Republican leaders or GOP voters when he does. Black leaders and Democrats argue Trump's tone and actions on race have gotten even worse in the months since the clash in Charlottesville, Virginia. The result is a starkly segregated political landscape where there is scant punishment. Democrats are pinning their hopes of flipping control of Congress on mobilizing liberals and minorities, particularly Black voters. And Republicans' best chance of holding off a Democratic wave is strong turnout among the conservative white voters who helped sweep Trump into office and often cheer his willingness to dive into hot button issues with racial overtones. Trump has told associates that he believes at least one of those issues. His criticism of Black NFL players who kneel during the national anthem is a political winner because it energizes his white base. He revived the matter on Friday, tweeting that players are expressing outrage at something that most of them are unable to define. Players have said they are protesting police killings of Black males, social injustice, and racism. Trump's rise to power can be traced through a series of statements that invoke racial stereotypes. In 1989, he called for the death penalty for the Central Park Five, five Black and Hispanic teenagers accused of raping and beating a white woman. They were later exonerated through DNA evidence, but Trump has suggested he still believes that they're guilty. For years, Trump promoted the lie that President Barack Obama was born in Kenya. Over the past year, from his perch in the White House, he's repeatedly questioned the intelligence of prominent Black figures, including Representative Maxine Waters, Democrat of California basketball star LeBron James, and CNN anchor Don Lemon, whom he called the dumbest man on television. So, one of the oldest strategies is to call into question the intellect of African Americans, said Mitch Landrieu, the former Democratic mayor of New Orleans. It's just sad and awful. NAACP President Derek Johnson said the Black community has never seen this level of tone deafness or this total disregard from a modern American president. Even against that backdrop, Trump's response to Charlottesville stood out. In his initial remark about the violent clashes that killed counter-protester Heather Heyer, the president said they were very fine people on both sides. There were fine people on both sides. 2 days later, reading carefully from a written statement, he condemned KKK, white supremacist, and neo-Nazi. Yet, in an unscripted moment, the next day he again said there was blame on both sides. The episode prompted some Republican leaders to condemn him. Some business leaders abandoned White House advisory committee. They contemplated quitting, but ultimately the outrage from those corners subsided. Back his agenda, well aware that polling shows there was no sustained damage to Trump's popularity among the party's voters after Charlottesville. If it did anything, it reinforced opinions, said Whit Ayres, a Republican pollster. The intensity of opinions changed both supportive and against. It confirmed what white people, or what most people thought about Trump, what Black and white both thought about Trump, and most people thought about Trump. It didn't change their views. So either they're for Trump or they're not for Trump. And so I added that in there. So according to a CBS News poll taken in the days after the Charlottesville clashes, a wide share of Democrats, about 7 in 10, said Trump's policies encouraged racial division. So it's exactly what I was saying. I kind of foresaid it. So either they're for Trump or they're against Trump. And it's this back and forth, white, Black, and whatever in between clash. And so in the country, little different from a poll conducted earlier in the year. So by comparison, more than 8 in 10 Republicans said the president's policies either had no effect on race relations or it encouraged unity. Trump's job approval among Blacks has shown little change, consistently stuck around 10% in most surveys. The White House did not respond to question about whether Trump has any regrets about his handling of Charlottesville protests or other racial rhetoric. So some of Trump's Black supporters argue that the criticism is overblown, and either people have a short memory or they've brushed it under the rug and they're focused on what's really important, their ability to take care of themselves economically, said Michael Barnett, an African American Trump ally who serves as chairman of the Palm Beach GOP and vice chairman of the Florida GOP. Yet a year after Charlottesville, the president's relationship with the Black community remains deeply strained. In a new memoir, former White House aide Omarosa Manigault Newman labels Trump a racist and claims she's been told there are tapes of him using the N-word repeatedly while filming the Apprentice reality series. So she's scheduled to discuss the memoir on national television Sunday, the anniversary of the Charlottesville violence. So a White House spokeswoman dismissed Manigault Newman as a disgruntled former employee. Pollster Henry Fernandez of the African American Research Collaborative reports that Black women in particular feel disrespected by Trump, a fact that may mean Charlottesville will come back to hurt Trump after all. So Black women helped fuel Democratic victories in recent months in Alabama and Virginia, and the Black voters make up a small but motivated slice of the electorate this fall. At least 7% of the electorate in more than a third of the nation's most competitive House districts, Fernandez noted. So, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, a Democrat and one of just 3 African Americans in the Senate, warned that the consequences for Trump's tone and action could extend well beyond political pain. So the president's demeaning and degrading and cruel attacks on minorities, Booker said, make people feel like they have a license to hate and make people feel like they have a license to hurt others. Booker added, these things are dangerous. And so this was reported out of the New York. AP polling reporter Hannon Fingerhunt in Washington contributed to this report. And so this is what you see up here. And so that's the reason why I made the statement that I made. Very little, but it looks really bad. And so you see that these are usually white nationalists. Now let's be descriptive here and distinct. These are people that are in the alt-right groups. They're, they listen to Breitbart, Daily Stormer, contribute to those papers. They're involved in neo-Nazism, anti-Semitic, and sometimes it could be a class issue. It could be maybe wealthy elite whites who are against poor class people of different backgrounds. Not just that you're in that class of people who doesn't have very much money. And so you don't necessarily have to be a person who, you can be white and you can be poor and you can be Jewish, and you don't happen to fit in these groups that are from these white supremacist groups, because they still hold those long hateful beliefs towards people that even if you are white, that you're poor or you're Jewish or or you're Black or a person of color or you're Hispanic, Latino, or you're somebody that's, maybe you're in the gay community. But sometimes even within those groups, you can have people who are closet racists. They may not be a part of those white nationalist groups, but they can be closeted and racist and have their own biases as well. So there's subgroups even within the groups that are Black. There are Black people sometimes that will exhibit classism towards other Blacks, or biases and stereotypes based on money, or it could be based on gender, or it could be based on sexual preference. And so there's different things even within the groups. So, but the most prevalent thing that we see is, nationalist, these groups that are hate groups that battle against one another. And then we have counter protesters who come to these protests to try to fend them off. And so it can get pretty violent. And so a counter demonstrator uses a lighted spray can against a white nationalist demonstrator at an entrance to a Lee Park in Charlottesville, Virginia. And so this is where this scene is happening. There has been no reset, no moment of national healing. This is 1 year after blaming both sides for the violent clashes between white supremacists and counter-protesters. President Donald Trump still flirts with the racially tinged rhetoric and feels little blowback from Republican leaders or GOP voters when he does. Black leaders and Democrats argue Trump's tone and actions on race have gotten even worse in the months since the clashes in Charlottesville, Virginia. And you see, it's pretty ignited right here. And at any moment, it could turn, even more violent. What are your thoughts and your feedback on this? This is sad, and this is how America is looking, and it just seems like there's no end in sight. And so this is pretty much the article. It's a sad situation, but this is constant, ongoing. It just never ends. Thanks for listening.